Hey all, welcome to this session, Myths and Truths About Basketball Analytics. This session features two really great minds. I'm a huge fan of both of these guys, great minds of basketball. They do an excellent job of breaking down some of the more complex topics in basketball, making it approachable, making it simple, whether that's the X's and O's or diving into the deep end of data analytics. First, we have the owner and creator of the Basketball Playbook and Half Court Hoops. He's also a coach at Heritage High School in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Gibson Pyper, and opposite Coach Pyper is the owner and creator of Hoop Vision, and he's also a former video coordinator for the New Mexico State men's basketball program, Jordan Sperber. Gentlemen, I'm thrilled to have you both here today at Swish 21. Please take it away.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate it. I guess how we want to start, Gibson and I, first of all, for those of you that aren't familiar with us, Gibson and I have done a podcast in the past. So this is almost like a reunion of sorts for us. And I think this sort of idea of analytics and just this general topic was something that we wanted to talk about more and never did. So this is a great forum for us. I guess really quick, you got our bios, but let's talk about our relationship with analytics specifically. So for me, analytics was kind of how I got into the college basketball industry. I was the guy in high school who was literally in spreadsheets and learning about basketball analytics and taking statistics classes. And that was the way I differentiated myself I was a graduate assistant at the University of Nevada and then video coordinator at New Mexico State, like Brad said. Gibson has, and I should say since working in the industry, I think I've been a little bit more well-rounded. So I've done a lot more with the X's and O's. I learned a lot from the coaches that I worked with. And so I still have that sort of foundation of analytics, but now with a broader approach to the game as well. Gibson's background's a little bit different, so I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, when it comes to analytics, for me, it was definitely secondary. I was trying to learn the game. I was studying film. I was studying coaching clinics, coaching notes. And then I read Dean Oliver's book and kind of learned more about it. Didn't really like grasp it. It can get pretty complex, especially in that book. But what I started to realize is as a coach, you need to have the whole picture, and analytics are a big part of that. So started to learn more, started to dive deeper, started to figure out what's important, at the high school level, and then MBA as they moved into kind of like this whole analytics surge, if you will. Just kind of processed all the information. I use it occasionally in like my breakdowns, but for coaching, I definitely use it as a huge tool, especially in high school, because at the school I coached at previously, we didn't have the best talent. So we had to kind of find, where we could win, where we could beat other teams. And that, analytics played a big part in that. So developed as I kind of went along, took a stat class at my local college here, just to learn more about it too. And I loved it. So now I use it a lot in terms of kind of interpreting what I'm already seeing on film and then taking that kind of whole, picture approach.
So you mentioned Basketball on Paper, which was definitely something that I read too early on in high school. And really, during that time, which is now 10, 15 years ago, when that book was getting really popular and when I was starting to get into it, analytics wasn't a word that was used yet. Actually, it's a kind of a buzzword that's been added after the fact. And what the basketball stats movement used to be called at that time, for the most part, was tempo-free statistics. Everything was tempo-free. And I think that book did an especially good job of laying out what tempo-free means. And that was really like the first insight, I think, from the whole movement, was to look at the game on a possession basis. And Gibson, you mentioned how you use this with your high school team. I think this ties into it. But really quickly, the example that was always used back then, and now both of these coaches are actually retired, so it's a little bit outdated, but Roy Williams in North Carolina always played and plays a fast pace, and Bo Ryan in Wisconsin play a slow pace. And if you're just looking at traditional points per game, naturally, Wisconsin under Bo Ryan was never going to look like a good offensive team. And and they were always going to look like a good defensive team. And then exactly the reverse for North Carolina. And one of the founders of this sort of tempo-free movement was Dean Smith, who was before Roy Williams as the guy. And I don't think it's a coincidence that someone that played at his pace sort of realized, no, per game numbers aren't quite as accurate as points per possession, or looking at things on a per possession basis. And is that kind of where you start with your high school stuff?
Absolutely, because in a high school game, you could have 20 turnovers and you think that's horrendous, but then you talk about, well, you had 180 possessions. We don't, but in high school games, usually 80 to 100 possessions on a fast team. So like if you have 10 turnovers, that could seem like, oh, the coach's goal was 10 turnovers. We reached that goal. Like we did our good job this game, but we only had 55 possessions. Like maybe that's not a great number you want to have when it comes to the actual possessions in the game. And then the next game you have the same 10 turnovers, but it was a 70 possession game. So it just allows us to interpret more clear. Like instead of just putting a hard number like 10 turnovers, it's like, no, we want to only turn the ball over on 10% of our possessions, or 15%, whatever the goal is. So that way you're not trying to go from 10 turnovers to 8 turnovers. You can just go from, hey, let's go 15% turn percentage down to 14. Let's just keep cutting the number down. And it does help the kids kind of visualize, hey, we're making progress. Going from 10 to 9 is good. But if you go from 15% to 10%, it gives them more of like solid numbers versus just 10, 9, 8, and it gives them a little more progress to reach.
Right. So that's one of what's called the 4 factors, which is, again, a Dean Oliver creation. At least the name is a creation. And I guess let's lay those out for everyone. So the 4 factors are shooting, turnovers, which is what Gibson mentioned, rebounding, and free throws, getting to the foul line. And Gibson, all of them can be sort of made tempo free. So measured as accurately as possible, basically, is the goal of tempo free stats. And the first one that Gibson just explained is turnover percentage, which is, okay, we had this many possessions, we turned it over this many times. That one's pretty simple. Another one that is now very common within, coaching and even I think fans sort of understand, is effective field goal percentage, which is measuring shooting. And the whole idea of effective field goal percentage is threes are worth 50% more than twos, and that should be reflected within our percentages. So if you think about a guy who is a 40% three-point shooter, if you're just looking at raw field goal percentage, he doesn't necessarily stand out, and effective field goal percentage accounts for how much those shots are worth. Is that something that you guys look at? I know. So at the college level, at every TV timeout, you get a box score, like a printed out box score. I'm assuming you guys don't have this. So are you looking at some of this stuff in game, or is it out of game for you guys?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of the resources, unfortunately, especially when COVID hit too. It's just like all our budget stuff, gets slashed. So what we do is we kind of, after the game, go through and chart everything and look at it from there. We try to keep an open mind during the game, but again, you see one shot miss and it's bad and you just get in your own head. So most of our stats are done after the game. We may keep track of like turnover. Like if we know we're turning the ball over a lot, in the last 5 games, may keep track of them during the game. But for the most part, like from my coaching perspective, I'd rather focus on like the adjustments we need to make from a scheme standpoint versus a result standpoint. Because, if you become result oriented, you could have the best actions and the best offense and the best defense and the best effort, but the shots aren't going in and the other team's making every shot they take. And then you become focused on the result versus focused on the process of, hey, we're doing the right things. We're making the right decisions. They're doing what we're asking them. It's just the end result isn't there yet. So trying to focus more on, the in-game adjustments, what are the players thinking, how can we help them in these moments? If we're a young team, try to get them to learn more, things like that, maybe, situation stuff like that. So we don't do a lot of in-game charting. I would love to. I think that's one of my, one of my goals when I become a head coach. I'm an assistant, just for reference. When I become a head coach in the next few years, that's the plan. I'm going to have somebody on my staff, hopefully from the high school that I coach at or college I coach, whatever it is, to be able to give me some of that information if they're interested, kind of like you were in high school, where I could help them and then give them creative freedom so they can kind of learn and grow in that process. Cause I think that'd be really beneficial, to somebody and get them like a head or something.
Well, that's pretty good general advice for a high school coach, a college coach, whatever it is to find the nerd like me. Yeah. I mean, it definitely happens at the college level with student managers. And, sometimes it could take some training, depending on how advanced you want to get. If you're just charting field goal attempts and things like that, you can probably get it going pretty quickly. But if you're trying to chart things specific to your scheme or your team, it is sometimes a matter of putting some stuff or putting in the time on the front end, so you have like a trained person on the back end. But let's stick with the 4 factors here. I want to get back to the process and results thing, but just so that we lay them all out. So we talked about shooting and turnovers, and the third one is rebounding. And I think that this one is maybe the least obvious right away for why it's important to not use rebounding margin, which is generally the way that rebounding is classified. And it's a good lesson in tempo free statistics and in analytics in measuring things just a little bit more accurately. So what rebound margin does is it doesn't simply isolate rebounding. A lot of whether or not you are a good or bad rebounding team in terms of rebounding is if you force missed shots on defense. That seeps into rebounding margin, is if you force missed shots. So if you think about it, on any given shot, the defense has a better chance of getting the offensive rebound, generally speaking, than the offense. Better positioning, a better chance to box out. Even if at the college level, even when the best offensive rebounding teams play the worst defensive rebounding teams, they're still not usually getting over 50% of their misses. And so what rebounding margin becomes is it's a big advantage for if you force missed shots, which is important. You want to be a good defensive team, but we just want to measure rebounding. And that's where rebounding percentage comes in. So it's rebounds divided by total potential rebounds available. So how many missed shots are the opponents getting and what percentage are we getting from those? So it does end up being very similar to turnover percentage. And it's not that one counter argument that gets used about rebounding margin is it's a very good predictor of who wins, which is very true, because everything I kind of just said about the missed shots are good for winning. But a key thing when doing analytics, when measuring things in basketball, is to be as precise as possible. So if we just want to measure rebounding, that's where rebound margin comes into play.
Yeah, and that's where high school, it becomes a little bit more wonky, because if we play a team next year, they'll have a 6'9" guy or 6'10" guy. We play good teams, and we don't. so we may look at and be like, well, we got 28%, or they only had a 20% offensive rebound rate. We got 80% of our boards, but if they score on every single offensive rebound because we don't have anybody to compete with them, that's different than just winning, that rebound percentage battle, right? So for us, we kind of look at that as, okay, well, for offensively, yeah, we're trying to get 20 to 25% of our shots back, because we're not the biggest team, so that would be a good win for us. But we want to convert half of our offensive rebounds into points. So that's where I think the 4 factors lay that out really well for offensive rebound percentage, defensive rebound percentage. But there's a secondary kind of, okay, the second chance points comes into it after the offensive rebound happens. So, which I don't see a lot of people kind of go deeper into, and they maybe not be readily available, because second chance points could be the ball goes out of bounds and then they get the ball back. I don't know how a lot of people track that, but for us, that's kind of our way we look at it. It's not just, did we get the offensive rebound? It's, did we score? Did we turn it over? Did they score? Did they turn, what happened after that?
Sure. Which is kind of a combination of 4 factors then, rebounding and the shooting, but I'm curious, while we're on the topic, what is your team's sort of offensive philosophy after those rebounds. There's like teams like Villanova that are so good at spraying out for threes. And it sounds like if you don't have a lot of height, are you trying to spray out or what's the case there?
Yep. Every rebound looking for a three immediately. We call them green threes. Anytime we get it, we look for the green guy shooting. So we have green, yellow, red shooters, right? So anytime we get an offensive rebound, we may even yell green at the beginning of the season to get them in the mindset of as soon as you get it. I mean, if you have a layup, yeah, like score it. But like as soon as you get it, if you don't feel like you have anything, we're turning and looking, and we just have the other four guys get to our slot, corner, and then relocate second cut to get open and look for that catch and shoot three, because the defense is usually scrambling, and it's a great time in rhythm three. Usually uncontested, and then go up from there. So
got it.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, just given your personality, that's what I would have expected.
Yeah, for sure.
So the last of the four factors is free throw rate, which is a measure of how often you get to the line. It's measured by free throws attempted per field goal attempted divided by field goal attempted. So if you think about the best NBA players, they have very high free throw rates, although they do take a lot of shots as well. But I'm curious, how often do your teams get to the line? That's one thing we've talked a lot in the past, Gibbs and I, about how things translate from the NBA to college to high school. What's that look like at the high school level?
Yeah, it is a lot of variance year to year, to be honest. Because it just personnel and everything changes, who you play. Our conference changes from last year to this year. So the first year there was about 32%. Next year was 35. Last year was 38. But we only played 13 games, right? So we went from 28 games to 13. So of course, it's probably going to be a little more skewed compared to last year. Also, we had a really good player go to Wake Forest who was good at getting the free throw line. So it was basically around 32 to 35% is normal for us.
Mm-hmm. Is that of the four factors, is that the one that can vary the most from year to year?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because like you play teams that press, right? So in general, they're going to foul more, right? But you're also going to turn the ball over more. So like looking at this, like I have like 10 games, just I'm looking at real quick. Like we have a 35% free throw rate, 18-point loss, 45, a 16-point loss, a 45, a 13-point win, a 45, a 9-point win. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of what we don't take away a lot from, we got a good free throw rate, we probably did well. It's like, no, it could be any, because we had in one of the games we had a 44% free throw rate, but a 28% turnover rate. So it to me that's the biggest thing is we want to get to the free throw line, obviously, because we get free throws. They're really valuable. It stops the clock. We can set up a press, set up our defense, but it's not something that we're like free throw rate. We got to look at, well, are we getting the line enough? That's not really at the high school level for us. That hasn't really been shown like a lot of correlation with success.
Mm-hmm. So what you're kind of getting into there a little bit is something that I talk about with coaches a lot, whether or not they use or if they do, what are their game goals? Is that something that you guys do at all? It doesn't sound like it with free throw rate, but just in general.
Yeah, turnovers is the biggest one for us. I mean, we do want to have good shooting. We want to, but like for us, the biggest one, you can control turnovers, in my opinion, more than you can control the rest of them. So we definitely harp on those first. So if we can control a turnover and really win that battle first, that will set us up for success a lot. Because even if you have a soft press in high school, teams are going to throw the ball around the gym at least 5 to 6 times a game. Like it's just natural. I mean, they do it in college too. So for us, we focus on turnover percentage. And then after that, it's more like for us, how we approach it is, did we create an advantage? Did we keep the advantage? And did we get the shot we want? So we kind of keep those 3 things in mind each possession. So we may have like instead of doing points per possession, we'll just do like a maximum of 3 points per possession in terms of, did we create the advantage? If we didn't, then it's a 0 possession. If we got all 3, then we give us 3 points, and then we tally it up, divided by possessions that way. So it's a little bit different than just like points per possessions, turnover percentage, but we do chart and keep track of the 4 factors from analytics perspective, because Right now we only have 2 guys on staff, and we don't, can't really afford necessarily do a lot of, Hudl or crossover was before, but Hudl and things like that. So we chart out the 4 factors and shot chart stuff. Like, are we getting the looks that we want? But it's more about, are we creating the right decisions along the way? And then that's everything else usually takes care of itself if that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that we've been talking about a lot of is I already mentioned it, the different levels, and maybe the biggest, if there is a myth of analytics or a misconception of analytics, is that I think if you surveyed 100 people, a segment would say that analytics literally means shoot more threes. Like that's what it means, and there's no doubt that was one of the biggest things that came from the movement. I mean, you can see how the NBA has changed, and it's probably not 100% because of the analytics people, but they had some role in the way that style of play has changed. But the analytics isn't devoted to any one philosophy or strategy. It's trying to find inefficiencies, and it's trying to ask and answer questions with data is kind of how I normally define it, asking and answering questions. So what shots should we take is one of them. But there's probably within the NBA, there's not even a specific answer of how many threes you should be taking. It depends on your team. It depends on your personnel, especially then if you start to go to different levels. This was a couple of years ago now. But I remember tweeting a stat. I think this was 2 years ago when they moved back the 3-point line in college, which changed the game. But about 30% of teams shot more efficient on post-ups than 3-pointers at the college level, about 30%. And if you do that same thing for the NBA, it's like 1 or 2 teams a year, like 5% of teams, and there's rule differences. The lane is bigger, so it's harder to get deep post position. There's only 30 teams in the NBA, so everyone has post defenders, right? Whereas I'm sure at your level and even at the college level, post defense is very different. That you might not have let's take out 7-footer. You might not have a 6'7" guy, Yeah. And so all of what I'm saying doesn't go against analytics. It goes against the 3-point revolution a little bit, but the whole goal of collecting data, collecting information is to answer questions like these and apply it to your level of basketball. And yeah, well, you can go with that however you want, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think the big thing is a lot of people, like, literally it's come down to now, especially in the NBA, where it's like, if someone says the word analytics, they're like, oh, you mean you can't shoot pull-ups? Like, that's what it's become, right? And that's the frustrating part, is it's become like a debate because some of the old school players who, they never played like this, they have their way of thinking and their beliefs, and people want to interview them for some reason to keep that going. I mean, I don't mind if you talk to them, but like it's become so negative because of people saying like you shouldn't. And it's like, analytics don't tell you the rules, right? Like, analytics aren't giving you this is what basketball is played in this absolute form. Like, that doesn't exist. It just tells you the information that as a coach you're currently working with, and you have to take that information and apply it to your current situation and figure out the best way to move your team forward. And like, we lump everybody into one category, right? Because of synergy and data like that, where if a team, like a lot of NBA teams, are inefficient in the post up compared to other plays, right? But it doesn't take into account, like, if Draymond Green posts up versus Karl Anthony Towns, because Draymond Green isn't going to look to score. He's looking to pass. Karl Anthony Towns may be looking to score because he's more skilled in the post. And it's like, so we're taking these one team sheets at times, or one player sheets at times, and we're just looking at the numbers and being like, man, that post play is inefficient. It's like, yeah, but like, if you look at the NBA finals, Giannis was killing them, not necessarily out of the post, but in post up like scenarios. Booker and Chris Paul are 2 elite mid-range players, so they can take mid-range shots. Next year, when the Warriors come back, they're one of the greatest 3-point shooting teams in the history of basketball still, because they have two amazing shooters who maybe never will see again on the same team. So they're going to shoot more threes. And it's not a bad thing that the Suns can shoot more mid-range and the Warriors can shoot more threes. But the problem is we get so left or right, like there's right or wrong. And it's like, it's not about that, right? It's about finding what is the best situation for your individual team, individual player, and how analytics can kind of enhance that.
Yep. So I have a really good example of what you're talking about with Draymond versus Karl Anthony Towns in the post. I did some consulting for a Division I team whose best player was a 7-footer. He was their best offensive player, who was a 7-footer with his back to the basket. And again, you would think, like that's analytics. How are you going to do analytics consulting for the team with whose best player is a post player? No, we used the data and the information that we had available to try to make marginal gains to shot selection. So when your best player is a 7-footer with his back to the basket, you're going to be a post-up team. That's what it is. And so we looked at how he is on post-ups from the left block, how he is on post-ups from the right block, how he is when he passes out to a cutter versus a spot up, and try to contextualize all of what he does well versus poorly and build an offense around him. Naturally, you mentioned this, and it's exactly right. The numbers aren't going to say, run a rip set to get him on the right block. Like there needs to be some application of coaching and domain expertise that goes into this. But they can also really keep you grounded sometimes, the numbers. It's just maybe we can get into this a little bit. But I find that when I'm watching film, I see something and I instantly want to see. Let's say a team appears to be shooting a lot of threes or something like that. I want to see where they rank on the leaderboard. I'm like, it looks like they're shooting a lot of threes. And then the same thing can happen when I'm looking at numbers. I see a team that took the most threes in the country, and I go, oh, I really want to watch the film on this. I want to see what they were doing offensively. They go together, and they're not in conflict. It's like it's a natural synergy between the numbers and the film.
Yeah, they're like you're talking about. Most of the time, if I'm watching a game, I'll watch a team play, and I'm like, pull up Ken Palm. I'm like, where do they rank on the 3-pointers attempted? Like I usually look at, because I do, like, for us, in the 6 years of running an offense in high school, we've only had one player who was over 6'8", and he wasn't a post-up guy. He was like a ball screen roll guy and offensive rebounding, kind of like a hustle effort guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, really good athlete, really talented. He'll go play in college, but like he wasn't like throw it to him in the post and score, which if you have that in high school, those guys are really good. Like you're not going to stop them. It just, they're so good. Like Jaden Gardner, who played for us before, is at Virginia now. Like those guys in high school, he was 20-20 every night, whenever he wanted to do. So for us, what we look at is, okay, well, like at the Cary Academy, the schools that before was like, all right, we have shooters. Our biggest player was 6'4", and he was a guard. Like Trey Murphy, for those that know Trey Murphy, he was 6'4" in high school, 6'5" in high school. He's a guard. He's our best player. And it's like, okay, well, we're not going to look at post-up teams. We're not going to look at teams that, slow the game down. We got to play fast. We got to shoot threes. So I'll look at those teams, and then I'll look at Ken Palm's list of teams that shoot the most threes. And it's like, there's so much variance in the offensive rating compared to the 3-pointers attempted. So you look at, you're like, okay, well, there's not a lot of correlation, but like Alabama, right? They shoot a lot of threes. They had a really good offense. Then you watch it and it's like, oh, okay, here's what they're trying to do behind these numbers. So you can't always just look at like the stats of the NBA team who makes the most passes. Like there's the top 5 teams in passing. It's like the first in offensive efficiency and then like 28th up, because the first team is the Warriors and they're really good at passing. And then the worst team has to pass because nobody's really good at scoring individually. So it's you just got to kind of look at the numbers and the film and then kind of figure out the sweet spot of where you kind of want to watch and learn from.
I really like that example of the passing. And it's an example of what makes analytics difficult. Is it's not a science experiment where we get to the best way to figure out passing would be like taking the Warriors and then putting different players on their team so we could get a random sample and determine how passing, we don't get to do that. It's not, basketball isn't played in a lab. And what you kind of just talked about is like what's called reverse causation. So the reason why these passing teams are sometimes poor in offensive efficiency is not because of passing is the cause. It's because not having players or not having good enough players is the cause of the passing. It's the reverse. And that is when I think the best data scientists or the best analysts, when doing stuff, whenever they find a result that's kind of surprising, the right thing is to be skeptical. You should have you should be skeptical of really whether you're using analytics or film or whatever it is. It's it can lead to some misinformation if used the wrong way. And we talked about this in preparation for this conversation, Gibson. But one thing that gets talked about a lot is the film doesn't lie, or the stats don't lie. And I think they're the exact same thing. If I give film to on a player or on a team to coaches, a group of coaches, and I have them give opinions, they're all going to come back with different opinions, depending on their level of competency and their experience. Hopefully they're going to be somewhat similar, depending on who the coaches are and all of that and their basketball background. Hopefully they're going to be somewhat similar, but there's going to be differences. And it's not that dissimilar from numbers and analytics. There are still people interpreting these things and using their basketball experience. Now, to be fair to the field of analytics, there are techniques and methods to avoid these biases and to be more responsible with this stuff. But so film numbers, it all has to be interpreted by people as well.
Yeah, and it reminds me of I think it was CJ's McCollum brother that tweeted out something about like he's not a good defender and he used defensive rating as the stat, and he thought, I think defensive rating, like the higher the number, the better you are on defense.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So it's like I think it's things like that too, where it's like I don't necessarily understand all of the NBA data has like so much stuff you can get caught up into, and it's like if you talk to most coaches, they usually aren't looking at all of this. Like I think if they're looking at the analytics department, their job is to kind of decipher that information and tell the coach what's most important. Here's the most digestible form of that. When you kind of do your either consulting or just something before, what was one of the ways you kind of were able to like clearly communicate that information? So that way, maybe if somebody is trying to do this, they can maybe to a coach, give it more clearly.
Yeah. Well, communication is huge with any decision making or process, but especially on something that in the consulting, obviously the coaching staff that I'm working with doesn't have the exact same level of expertise, so communication becomes even more important from there. And I mean, my biggest advice is graphs and pictures are very helpful, and colors. When I worked at Nevada for Eric Musselman, he had his whole own, and this wasn't necessarily analytics, but he would take a box score, just a traditional box score, and he had a color coding system for good and bad, and it was like unique to him. I had to learn it. And then when I started making analytics reports and things like that, I maintained his color coding system in a little bit different of a way. The other thing that I would point out to someone who wants to get into this is you're absolutely right that like a coach or even the final decision maker doesn't need all the information, he just needs to make the decision. But data itself is important for like my job. I want as much as possible to do my job, but absolutely you're not giving it all. So sometimes I talk to coaches and they're like, it's too much. Well, actually NBA teams invest like millions of dollars in tracking cameras and things that create this data. It is too much when it goes up all the way to the top of your organization. If you still have all of that, then it's too much. But data is a very powerful thing just in general. So I would point that out.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things talking about like passes and like the passing, right? The biggest, I think, topic with that is a lot of people think passing, just like passing numbers, the better passes, the better off you'll be. And I don't know if you can touch on this maybe from any college perspective. I know ESPN has put out a couple of like graphs on like certain games and different things like that. I've seen it on Twitter where it's passing versus ball reversals. And that's the big thing. I think that if you're going to look at passing numbers, the biggest difference is passing numbers don't mean anything from what I've studied. I've charted 6 years of high school possessions. I mean, I have, over 15,000, possessions charted. And the biggest thing was the number of passes don't mean anything. Number of ball reversals do. And the biggest thing for us was if we had less than one ball reversal, it was 0.48 points per possession. And I guess maybe we want to talk about what, like points per possession, what is generally a good number for points per possession scored?
So it definitely depends on league.
Right.
But what a lot of college coaches try to do is over 1.1 points per possession on offense and under 0.9 on defense, or you can simplify and say above 1 and below 1. But generally speaking, as you go down in leagues, the less efficient offense becomes. And NBA teams are extremely efficient, especially these days right now. But yeah, keep going.
Okay. Yeah. So that kind of gives a little bit of a baseline. So less than one pass, 0.4 points per possession, or less than one ball reversal. 2 ball reversals, it went to 0.71. 3 ball reversals, 0.85. And then 4 ball reversals, it went to 1.2. So like a huge jump, even from 2 to 3, but 3 to 4, like if you can get the defense moving side to side, that's the biggest thing that I would probably focus on if I'm going to look at passing or like movement, off ball movement, things like that, because you get them going this way and you get them moving, it creates a lot of chaos and you'll just find a lot more success. So that's over the 5 years of charting, that's what I've been seeing. So,
well, the other thing you mentioned earlier that ties into this is how you chart. It was an advantage created, and you like, that's why you're passing ultimately is to create an advantage. So it's about trying to make sure you're measuring what you truly intend to measure. So another example of where passing stats can go awry. We see this in football with rushing yards. When you get up by a lot late in a football game, you rush, you try to waste the clock essentially. And so it skews the end of game statistics towards running teams win in football. Same thing with passing. When you get up, now you're going to be more selective with your shot selection. It could just be more time of possession rather than passing if it's sort of like dribbling out top. But these are all things that are adding nuance to these numbers. A very simple way would be to ignore those possessions in your analysis of those like stall ball type of possessions. There are ways around these, but my advice is what exactly are you trying to measure? I really like the advantage creation thing that you mentioned. And it could be specific to your offense, like you can get very specific with analytics and how it impacts your scheme in particular.
Yeah. And we actually do that. I have an Excel document that I've been keeping for the last 2 years where we'll chart individual plays and individual like types of plays and what happened on the court. So that way it's not just like, this game we scored, 85 points. It's like, well, every single possession is its own story. So going through the film, going through the data, I can look at, okay, we're scoring really well off our chin set. Like, why is that? And like, why don't we run that more? So we know we're going into the next game. We've only run our chin set 4 times in the previous 5 games, but we've scored every time. Well, let's run this 10 times this game. And then maybe that game you run it 10 times and you only score 2 times. But then you look at, okay, in those 15 possessions that we have, why are we only scoring? Like, are we creating the advantage? We're keeping it, you can go into your individual system that you talk about in each individual play. So there's a lot of For us, we go into a lot of detail in terms of like, okay, well, this play is working really well for us. Why is it working? Like, are we just making the shot versus are we running it right? This play isn't working. Are we just missing the shot and we're running it right? Things like that. And I think coaches can get caught up in looking at it too much. And so that's why we try to simplify that into those three things where it's just like your creative advantage. Do we keep it? Do we get the shot that we're looking for either in our system or for that player? Because every player isn't created equal. And if anybody tells you that, shot selection doesn't matter, it does, but like it matters way more in high school than I think it does in like the NBA. So
one of the great parts about doing as much charting as we both do, or I did when I was working for teams, is you get the numbers, but you're also watching film. It forces you to systematically evaluate your team in a more like organized way than maybe sometimes when we watch film. And I think you guys do this with your high school team, but another example that comes to mind is when I was at New Mexico State, we ran, I worked for Coach Jans, who's still the head coach there. And we ran about 50 set plays. He had a pretty large playbook. And halfway through the season, I had been somewhat charting just how sets in general had been doing. And I knew that they hadn't been doing that well. And the big advice that every head coach gives to assistant coaches, it's almost a cliche at this point, but if you're going to criticize, you better have a solution, right? Like, don't come to me just with problems. That's it's something in the college basketball world that's talked about a lot. And so naturally, I have these statistics on how our set plays were doing, and we had other elements of our offense that we could use besides the set plays. But I don't think that, especially in the middle of the season when you don't necessarily have time to like overhaul a whole offense, that it would have been that productive to say we suck when we're running our sets. That's what the numbers would say.
Yep.
And so what I did was I charted points per possession on every single set, but also I had notes on like the execution. Like Johnny it wasn't in the spot when we were like very, very specific details of, either we're not running it right because we did have so many, our guys were not the best at executing at times, like and so it goes back to the using these things in conjunction with each other. I think that the stats, the points per possession, added a lot of value in that case. It gives you a starting point for where to look at, what sets have been effective, what haven't been, but then the little details that are going to be important for a coach. And that's, you have to get into the details of whoever you're working with. In this case, is coaches.
Yeah, for sure. Let's say you recommend maybe a starting point, right? Let's say a high school coach doesn't really know a lot about analytics, or wants to maybe do more. Where do you think a starting point should be?
I think that Basketball on Paper by Dean Oliver is a really good start. It is sort of NBA based. I haven't read it in a while, but it's fairly NBA based. But another piece of advice that I give in terms of reading is not even necessarily, like you just took a statistics course, you said, and even if it's not about I mean, naturally, I find basketball interesting. I like reading about basketball, but there are just the concepts of statistics can be extremely helpful for all of decision making, and coaches have to make as much decisions as anyone. So like Freakonomics or things like that are on how humans make decisions. I think that's a really good start. And then I'm biased here, but there are a lot of online resources on these things. Half Court Hoops and Hoop Vision are the two that we do. But you can learn quite a bit off of YouTube videos. We both have newsletters, and there's a lot out there to get you started with, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you're going to do it as coming from a high school coach, who necessarily didn't know a lot, 5-6 years ago. I would say the biggest thing you can do is just focus on one thing for like the first season, because we're in the preseason now, so it's probably a little too late to really go deep into it. We're starting tryouts in a month and a half, but I think the biggest thing is choose one. Like choose turnover percentage, maybe choose free throw rate, whatever you're going to focus on, or choose one sort of analytical idea and then go with that, and just focus on maybe on that for the season. And then you maybe get a feel for baseline for how it goes, and then go from there. So that's kind of how I would approach it. Obviously I marry the film, and every time I chop up film for us, I put in notes in each file, so if we run a play, I'll say like not run right, or like, horrible decision by whoever, or a good decision by whoever. It's not always horrible, but it's just notes for myself. And then I upload those into Dropbox so all the coaches can see like, oh, we ran, this chest action, why didn't it work? They can click on the file, they can see the video and see the file name, and then, go from there. So that's kind of how I do it. I give as much information as possible. But again, like you said, I wouldn't go to if I'm an assistant, I wouldn't go to the head coach and be like, hey, this play is not working, and then just walk away. You look at the film, like you said, talk about why it's not working, and say, hey, here's the adjustment I would make. And most of the time the head coach isn't going to listen to that adjustment, but that's okay. They like having that information, so they can say no or yes. I promise you, as long as the communication is clear and concise, they'll appreciate you doing that work. So yeah.
I think you can like wear off on them over time. The first time it's a no,
Oh, yeah.
and then if it keeps becoming a thing months down the road, all of a sudden that you might get some change there.
Yeah, but it's all about how you present it, and how you have that mentality of, like when I go to our head coach or something, now it's like, we have the trust. He basically, if I didn't even go to him, and he would be like, yeah, whatever, like just do what you need to do. But that's because 2 years ago I would go to him and be like, hey, this is why I think we should do this. Here's a whole page report. And most of the time they don't even look at the whole thing. They'll look at it and read, see your intent is good. And most of the time be like, okay, let's try it. And then if that doesn't work, then maybe you have to work a little harder. But for the most part, I think if you went with a realistic approach to, hey, I studied the numbers, I studied the film, here's what I'm seeing, here's where I think we should go with this, then it becomes a conversation versus a combative kind of dialogue.
Sure. Yeah. People skills and communication are definitely a big part of this, and probably like the fitting spot to end, because it's not something that you necessarily think about when you think about analytics right away, or all of this stuff. But I hope that you guys got some information that is of value. We are both online on Twitter at I'm at HoopVision68. Gibson, you're at Half Court Hoops, right?
Yep.
And we would be happy to help further if there's a way that we can help your teams. This was fun, wasn't it, Gibson?
Yeah, a lot of fun, man. It's always fun talking a lot of basketball with you.
For sure. It's almost like we should do a podcast.
Crazy. Yeah, if you do want to listen to those podcasts, that was the Big Game Pod. They're still up on iTunes and stuff. We may be doing it again every now and then. We'll see. But we do go into a lot of these conversations on that podcast, and more specific to teams and games and situations that you can always go back and watch too.
And a big thank you to Brad and Hudl for having us. We appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to checking out some of the other sessions.
Absolutely.